You have a little clicker?
Yep. Thank you so much for coming in to our presentation. We're going to talk about DevOps at scale, how the Washington Post Art Publishing is using Akamai APIs to grow their business. So quickly going through the agenda, we're going to make a quick intro to Art Publishing, what it is. Then we're going to talk about Akamai for DevOps. What do we have? What do we offer? How do we help Art Publishing using our DevOps tools? We're going to do a few quick demos on how Washington Post Art Publishing is using these tools, and we're going to have 10 minutes for Q&A at the end. Just a quick note on Q&A, there's going to be a microphone. Raise your hand if you have a question, and somebody will approach you with a microphone. My name is Yair Greenbaum. I'm an engagement manager at Akamai, aligned to the Washington Post Art Publishing account. I've been with Akamai for almost 10 years now.
Cool. I'm the other guy on the slide, Ian Baker. I've been with the Washington Post for about 12 years, one of the technical directors underneath Art Publishing. All right, so first question, what is ARC? Everybody knows what the Washington Post is or who the Washington Post is. But ARC was started as an idea of a set of products that help the Washington Post publish content on its website. And we soon found that those issues that we faced in publishing content were sort of universal for a lot of other content publishers, whether it was newspapers or media, and that evolved into the SaaS platform that you see today. So by the numbers, ARC started launching clients in 2017, probably around 100 or so configs. By the end of 2018, we were surpassing 300 configurations, and now we're 629 and counting, basically. Each of these configurations is a live site for us. Multiple host names on that site, mobile, www, MDOT, whatever the customer needs. So you're seeing 1,000+ host names associated with all of those configurations and the CP and 400+ CP codes to go with it. We're using Image Manager on almost all the configurations right now, along with the Edge Redirector and audience segmentation Cloudlets on those. And then all of that is wrapped by Kona on the front side.
And we expect this number to be at around 1,000 configs by the end of the year. And maybe it's important to say, some of you in the audience probably see these numbers and think, I have 1,000 configs or thousands of configs on my account, tens of thousands of host names. We have customers like that. It's important to say that all of these configs are delivering live traffic on a daily basis. We don't have the term legacy configs that are properties that don't deliver traffic anymore and are just sitting on the account. All of these are prime properties for their owners, which are news sites across the world. So all of them are active. All of them are being updated on a daily basis.
So this is just a quick splattering. Hopefully you recognize some of these. Maybe they're your local news outlet or station. It's just worth noting some of these sites are very small. They're one town in the middle of the country. Some of them are major metro markets, Boston Globe, LA Times, Globe and Mail. They're also not all here in the US. We service clients in Europe, South America, pretty much all 5 continents around the world. So it's not just, our market is not just East Coast where WAPO is. It's really, 24/7 around the world.
So just to talk quickly about our config structure. So all of our configurations are copied from one golden master config, which is the source of everything. This config is the template that we create all other configs from. The top of the config is a templated section where is identical for all our customers, and the bottom is the specific section where we put in specific information for this customer, such as custom origin, SSL certificates, et cetera. And it's important to show when we talk about our pipeline and workflow so you understand how we manage that. So as we know, Akamai is driving to have our configs as code. Every Akamai configuration has a JSON representation. This is an example of one of our configs JSON file. So all of your configs on Akamai currently have JSON representation, which we are using in our pipeline. So how do you manage? How do you manage that? How do we manage launching, 3 to 5, and we just had 8 new customers last week, 8 new customers this week. How do we manage launching and maintaining customers at such scale? How do we manage making changes to hundreds of configs at the same time? So the old way would be to hire 10 people, put them in a room, have them open Luna, go through configs, make changes, push them to staging, test them, push them to production. Not very efficient. We do it the other way. We use Akamai for DevOps tools. So what is our vision for DevOps at Akamai? We want to allow you to work inside your environment using your tools at your speed and at your scale. It's all about maintaining your workflow rather than breaking it up by having you go into Akamai's tools. So before we get into the details, I want to make sure that we are all on the same page in terms of the definition. So what is DevOps? DevOps brings development and operations together, automating the software delivery pipeline. Why is it important? We want to empower our developers to ship software fast. It's all about speed. It's all about speed for delivery, and that's what we try to do here. So you've all seen this slide probably many, many times. We're just going to spend a few seconds on it. So the DevOps pipeline infinity figure from the plan phase to code, build, test, release, deploy, operate, and monitor. Some examples of the tools that our customers in Washington Post specifically is using to maintain and work through this pipeline. So how do we help you use your tools, your techniques, and allow you to deliver software more quickly? Over the past 2 to 3 years, we developed APIs for everything. From Property Manager API, which is the most obvious one, maintain, manage, change your configs, to Fast Purge, which we will show an example for specifically for the news use case, to traffic management, Fast DNS, certificate provisioning, and Cloudlet. More information is available on developer.akamai.com/APIs.
Yep, I don't think that was us.
No. Okay.
Okay.
So our goal with Washington Post Arc Publishing is to be Akamai without Luna at scale, being able to deliver content to hundreds of customers, make changes to hundreds of configs without ever touching Luna. That's the goal.
So, you just saw this slide a little bit a while ago, and I'll just point out some points where WAPO is integrating into this, infinity diagram. We already use, GitHub as a trigger for a lot of our existing products. So we're picking up, GitHub, processing that with Jenkins or AWS Code Pipeline to do our builds, and generate new configs inside of Akamai. Once they're launched, we're using DataStream to feed into Datadog, on-prem Splunk for analysis and sort of monitoring of live sites, and then going all the way around to say like Mpulse, which we're already using for adaptive acceleration, but we're bringing it back in to be able to provide insight for our clients into how is their site performing, and what is occurring live for them on edge.
Okay, so let's talk specifically about the tools and APIs that the Arc platform is using. So the most obvious one is Property Manager API, Akamai config as code, part of your pipeline. The ability to manage your configs locally through an API without going into Luna. Integrate Akamai properties into your existing pipeline. That's what the Property Manager, or as often being called PAPI or PA API, is allowing you. The second one is Akamai CLI, command line interface, which is really a wrapper around our APIs, allowing you to work with these APIs without having to develop your own software to interface with them. So CLI is available on developer.akamai.com/APIs. You get it, you install it on your machine, and gives you the ability to work with these APIs very, very easily and quickly.
So as a good example of this, this is a script that Arc uses to basically onboard a new customer site. Let me hit play. So this is a bash script. It basically executes a series of CLI commands. The first step is it's going to clone off of our master template, which you saw earlier, which brings in all of our standardized configurations and the basic configuration for any particular client. Once it's cloned that, it's updating things like the origin hostname, a few other options for that specific client. From there, it proceeds to pin the rules version to a specific rule set. This allows us to work with a consistent set of JSON behaviors, such that we know that the next time we activate this config, it's not going to error out because of a property upgrade, things like that. We want to make sure that it's locked in place until we're ready to upgrade it. After it's pinned, we go through and we add host names for the client. If they said what their www domain name is, we can go ahead and automatically add that to the configuration. Otherwise, we add a default Arc configuration, Arc host name. We download the rules JSON, so we can commit this directly back into our repo, where we continue to do management from. And then we activate the config. And once the config is done, at that point, the client is able to browse using, once they've done their DNS change and the other steps for cutover, they are able to browse this site on Arc, or they can use our internal Arc host name to browse it before they go live. And all of this is done basically without us ever going into Luna. We load this, pull it out of the repo, run the script, create the customer, and we're done.
So this is the entire workflow without ever going into Luna, from getting the original config, cloning it, changing it, pushing it out, testing it, and activating it.
Yep.
Great. The next one we want to talk about is custom behaviors. So we all know the pain with advanced metadata that can only be managed, written, and deployed by Akamai internal teams. We created what we call custom behaviors, which will basically allow you to reuse advanced metadata in your configs using the UI, and now also the ability to use custom behavior or advanced metadata using API. Washington Post is using heavily custom behaviors in their configs, which allow them to do some of the functionalities that are not available in the UI right now.
And just a note, there is no way that we would be able to manage configs at this scale without using custom behaviors. If we had to pause, and have somebody come in and manually, from the Akamai side, and manually edit a advanced behavior every time we do a base template change, because that behavior moved location inside that template, we would not be able to run at this sort of scale. So this is something that is very critical for the way we manage configuration.
And the way we do it, just to quickly add on that, we often get requests. Our internal team will get requests from Ian to create these custom behaviors. We create the custom behaviors in the template, and then we are basically done. Ian will not need any more intervention from Akamai. Once the custom behavior is added to the template, they can reuse them in whatever config is needed.
Yep. So to do a quick example of this, we'll actually run through adding of like a custom behavior, which removes double slashes to a client config. But the first thing to review is just our very artistic flow diagram for how our pipeline works. These steps should be, the bottom side should be fairly familiar for anybody who has worked in Luna. Update a configuration, activate it in staging, activate it in production. This is nothing necessarily, new. The change for us is that we're doing this via an AWS code pipeline. This allows us to turn around and integrate back into our Slack rooms, your email integrations, and allows us to manage that pipeline without even definitely not going into Luna, but not even going into AWS. It allows us to manage and run deployments in the way that we want to run it, which is via Slack, because we do lots of stuff in Slack.
So just a quick note, a clarification on the pipeline, Ian. So when we keep saying pipeline here, this is not the Akamai API pipeline. We do have an Akamai pipeline on the Akamai side. Washington Post Arc Publishing is using their AWS pipeline to work with Akamai APIs. So just a quick clarification.
Cool. OK, so to run through this real quick.
So that's the custom behavior. That's the code for the custom behavior?
Yep. So what you're seeing here is a JSON snippet that was created by Yair's group to remove double slashes. Say you publish an article online, it goes out in a news, a press release, it's published in your physical paper. It's kind of hard at that point to remove the double slash, so this behavior basically redirects users back in to not having it. So very simple. We take that JSON, we copy it into the customer's configuration, do a little formatting, save it, and then commit it to our repo. This is not anything new for anybody that is doing, doing development work. Once it's committed to our repo, our pipeline picks up off of a webhook and starts processing the change. Give it a second to sort of catch up. So here you see, code pipeline has said, all right, I've got an update for this. It's doing a quick diff to find out what the changed, what changes occurred in that commit, and then it kicks off a container. That container is the same container that is referenced on developer.akamai.com in the quick start guide. It was easy for us because it gave us all the CLI tools, any API tools that we needed in a convenient place. We didn't have to build that image. We were able to just reuse it. So here the container starts up, does a quick git diff to find out what config files were modified, creates a new version of the property, and then exits the stage in the pipeline. So we as Arc made a decision that we wanted to have the pipeline pause in this particular scenario. We wanted to be able to go in and look at the config in Luna, determine did we make a typo, did we set the behavior in the wrong location, make any sort of other mistakes. But it's not required. This pipeline, we could have configured this to just proceed directly through into the next phase. It was something that was our choice in design. So here you see me saying, OK, it's approved. And the process continues. It launches another container, which does basically a CLI activate. Akamai property activate in staging network. At this point, same sort of process. It will pause. We can go do, once the activation is done, it will go through and skip, or it'll go through and we can go through and do activation or checks on curl or whatever else we need, on the command line, and then tell the pipeline to proceed to the production network.
Great. So this is one. Our presentation is DevOps at scale.
Yes, yes. So it's noted, you're seeing one config here. There's no reason that this commit for us can't be 100 configs, or 200 configs.
And you do
configs.
that sometimes, right? So
yeah, yeah. So it's, if we do a master template change, so we say like our golden template, we're going to update allowed query parameters, or we're going to add a new Akamai feature, we can go in and update that template and regenerate all the JSON and commit it. So there's no restrictions for us about how many configs we activate, other than, how concerned we are about testing and validating those changes as they go out.
Now, what about testing? Do you have testing integrated into the pipeline right now?
Not currently. So we have been looking at Akamai test suites, in order to provide an additional step inside of this pipeline. So we have it run through, activate and staging, run a test suite, assuming that passes automatically, come back and run, do the production activation. And again, those test suites are available, via an API, so this can be done completely inside of our code pipeline.
Great. So right now, testing is done manually, and we're looking to move to automatic testing soon. Great.
Cool.
OK, so mistakes happen. People make mistakes, and we need the ability to fix them quickly. Fast fallback and deployment is also available through APIs. We might push a config out that will break something. Not very often, but we sometimes use fast fallback through APIs to roll back our configs. So like we said, we want to integrate Akamai into your workflow using your tools. Akamai APIs are available for all leading programming languages and libraries, just to mention a few over here on the slide.
And just a note on that, like what you saw in the previous video was like our version 1 of our pipeline running off of a container in CLI. Going forward, we'll be transitioning to a Lambda-based Python to execute all of these pipeline steps. It's a lot easier for us. It allows us to scale out a lot better, and we can integrate additional API calls a lot easier than just running off of a CLI.
We currently have integrations with these tools: Varnish, WordPress, Terraform. We are a Terraform provider, which Washington Post is currently not using, but maybe.
We looked at it.
Yeah. Great. So the last step of the Infinity workflow is monitor. So we made a change to one or more configs. We pushed it out. We want to see the impact. We use DataStream. With Washington Post, Arc Publishing is using DataStream for that. DataStream is Akamai's real-time edge performance monitoring platform, also used with APIs. The data is available for consumption through an API. The workflow for Washington Post is that the data from DataStream, real-time data from DataStream, is pulled into Datadog and Splunk, and they have a few triggers configured on that.
Yep. So what you're seeing here is an example of a dashboard that Arc provides to its clients. This gives them visibility into sort of the inner workings of what's happening inside of Arc, for their particular site. How many hits per second are they getting? What are their status codes? What's their latency, their cache offload, things like that, along with other stats that are internal to Arc, such as their origin hits and their rendering engine performance. This data allows the clients to make decisions, about a change that they just did on their site. Clients are allowed to develop their own features on their pages, so they can roll out new features and immediately get feedback, from Edge about, did this, feature with these 10 additional calls in it impact my, my page performance on Edge? Am I getting a lot of additional calls that are unnecessary? Should I, change that feature to function a different way? So we also take that same data, ingest it internally. This is for us to, as Splunk would say, find a needle in the haystack. If we have a complex problem that's brought up, we can really dig into the individual web requests that are occurring to help trace down, or help find the root cause for a problem.
Great. So with news publishers especially, removing content from the network very quickly is very important. The way Arc Publishing is structured, many times an article can appear in more than one site, and Ian and his team often gets requests to remove content or update content. A publisher might update an article, update an image, and we need the ability to remove content from the network very, very quickly without lowering our TTL. We still want to maintain high TTL for offload, but also the ability to remove content from the network very quickly. We use Fast Purge API for that at scale.
Yep. So this is just a little snapshot of purge activity for all Arc clients. At the time, and it's a little bit higher now, we were averaging a little over 1,000 purge requests every 10 seconds for content on Edge. And this is, for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of websites. Anytime a content producer, an editor, in a newsroom or at a client of ours updates a piece of content, we pick up an update, a Kafka topic for that update, and then automatically purge Akamai. So this is not, us going in manually and, purging a piece of content when somebody says this is completely programmatic. An update by an editorial user triggers a purge on Edge, automatically. And then, as an example, like this is just a little bit of the snippet out of that Kafka topic, showing for a single site, in this case, beta.washingtonpost.com, what we see internally, as these messages come through.
Great. Cloudlets are also used across the board with Washington Post. The two that are most commonly used are Edge Redirector and audience segmentation. Again, with news publishers and publishers in general, there's often the need to create vast amount of redirects from old stories, old URLs to new ones. We are using Cloudlets in the pipeline, using APIs for Washington Post and ARC Publishing.
Yep. So so a note on that, like that same Kafka topic that provides updates when a producer publishes a piece of content, also tells us about redirects that are occurring. So if you rename an article from one section to another section on the site, you don't want to lose your Google search ranking for that particular page. You want Google to be appropriately redirected. We automatically create redirects from the old URL to the new URL as the page is regenerated. We have a listener that picks those up, automatically generates a JSON block for the Edge redirector, and activates that in production. So again, completely automatic interaction with Akamai in both creating and pushing the Edge redirector cloudlet rules. We're doing a similar thing with segmentation in that we manually create test rules, but then they are automatically pushed out and activated on the network using a similar method to the JSON pipeline or the code pipeline you saw earlier. All right, so what's next? Really for ARC, it's about how much of the Akamai platform can we extend to our clients. I mentioned a second ago that right now we're manually creating the cloudlet rules and activating them. Having the ability to open that up to our clients so they can select from all the available Edge metadata to say I want to create a rule based upon this combination, and then save it and have it automatically upload and activate on network, without any interaction by a human at all. Also things like we're already using Impulse, so it's already integrated as part of our, it's our RUM data beacon. So we have that data and providing that back into a dashboard for clients to be able to look at KPIs to say, okay, DOM load or time to first byte changed, when I did this deployment. So, having access to the Impulse APIs allows us to present that data easily to the client in the same pane where they are saying, hey, I just did a deployment, with a bunch of new feature sets in it, or in the same pane where they just wrote a rule to do an A/B test between two different page variants and two different page layouts. They can now get immediate feedback to say, okay, page layout A is, this is time to interactive. Page layout B, this is its time to interactive. And so that is constantly what we're working on, is trying to bring all that additional data that's now available to us in these APIs back into a platform that our clients can use it easily and make good business decisions around it.
Yeah, so our goal for the next phase is extending these Akamai APIs from, currently Ian's team is the consumer of these APIs, to the next level, which is the ARC Publishing editor or technical person sitting at a newsroom somewhere around the world to be able to use these tools. And the example of an editor would like to create an A/B test, easily create the A/B test, push it out, see users coming into the test page, and also at the end monitor performance using real user monitoring, Impulse API. So that's the project that we are working on for the next 6 to 8 months. More information is available on developer.akamai.com/DevOps. If you have any questions, there's going to be a microphone. Raise your hand. Somebody will approach you, and we'll be happy to take questions. Thank you very much.
Yep. Great discussion.
And one last thing before we finish, you can rate the session on the app. So please.
Hope you enjoyed it.
Thank you.
So,
Question?
I wonder, do you use Akamai Kona site definer to protect your website? If yes, how do you automate configuring the Kona site definer?
Say that again?
Kona Site Defender.
Kona site definer?
Yeah, we are using Kona. Just on a technical implementation, like we implement not only, we have like rate, WAF, or web application security, by standard on all clients, to just things that you want to have on. And then we are currently in beta with like breaking out bot management tiers, for clients and allowing them to sort of opt into a bot management profile. But that is another actually area where we are starting to pull data out of the SecMon APIs, although those are being deprecated, and pull that actually into Datadog. So that same dash that you saw with data stream data in it, we will start to populate with Kona, WAF activity data as well.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, in the beginning of the presentation, you showed how you set up a new brand very smoothly and quickly for new host names.
Mm-hmm.
Did you also embed the setup and deployment of the SSL certificates for their host names? How did you do that?
Set up a what?
The SSL certificate for the new host name, is it also embedded in the process?
Yeah, it's not in that script. We generate an SSL certificate per client, which gives us sort of a uniform edge host name that we can use when we're adding the domain name for the client. And then we have a separate CPS CLI that adds the host name to the client, because not every client wants SSL first, if you will. It's, so when the client requests it, at that time we add their domain name to the certificate and come back. It's not a completely automated process, mainly because of the challenge responses coming back from Akamai. But the end state goal is that when they request SSL for a specific site, we automatically add a certificate already, and we just have to figure out a way to present the challenge certificates back to the user so that they can implement it. It's automatic if their domain is already pointed to Arc and already pointed to Akamai, but if it's not, and it's on a third-party provider, they have to give them DNS text records, things like that. Mm-hmm.
If you bring in a new behavior, how do you get the JSON structure?
So we tend to use scratch config. So if it's we have a lot of JSON snippets that we just sort of know, like this is one to enforce SSL and HSTS headers. Here's one to do course headers or AMP course headers. Like they're just sort of pre-baked. We know what they are. They work. If it's a custom request, sometimes we'll just write them in JSON. A lot of times we use a scratch config in Luna to sort of generate it, and then I would really love to thank whoever added the view in JSON button in Luna. I want to give them a hug, because it is really useful. So we just grab that JSON and bring it back into our repo, commit it, and then reactivate a config.
Are you using Sandbox at all?
We have started to, so the ability for us to
test locally?
Yeah, so we'll have a config, and we can now, rather than doing a 10-minute loop or 2.5-minute loop of activating that config and staging, we can now do that locally inside of Sandbox.
Plus affecting other people that might be working on the same thing. So
yeah.
Have you used Akamai pipeline?
We started down the path of AWS Code Pipeline prior to the CLI pipeline being released. Logically, it's very similar to kind of what we're doing as far as stitching together, here's your, here's a master template section, and then here's all the custom rules for the particular client. So we will probably continue down the code pipeline route and continue to work in that structure rather than switching to the CLI code pipeline. It's just how we do it. If we have clients making changes.
No, I understand. I'm just trying to understand if you already used it and pros and cons between the two. That's all.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have a question around day two operation, because this is related to building something from scratch. But let's say I'm a customer that wants to change something, and there is something that needs to be changed inside Akamai. My case is slightly different, because let's say we are doing everything in our company. So I will have people that will need actually to change Akamai configuration directly, not maybe something that then will need a change in Akamai. I will have dev that they would like to tamper or add things or change configuration in Akamai. How would you tackle this if you had the chance?
Sure.
See it?
So that second demo was basically a change to an existing client. So it's all represented in JSON. So if the client comes to us and says, hey, we have, long form HTML content that we want to serve out of an S3 bucket. To us, it's an alternate origin request. And so we have a template that says, okay, if path matches these trim paths, whatever the client says they want, this is the alternate origin. We pass in the host header, the host name that we're forwarding to, the host header, any SSL pinning, query parameters, methods, et cetera. That becomes, those go into specific fields in a standard JSON block, and then we just drop that into a known place inside of the customer's rule set, and then activate.
And just to clarify, Arc publishing customers don't have access to Akamai.
Yeah.
So everything goes through Ian's team, interfacing with us. The end customer make a request, but Akamai for them is a black box. They don't touch it.
My end customer is in my house.
Yeah.
They are seeing it.
For us, our WAPO is an end customer for us. They just happen to sit next door, so.
Yeah. Over there.
From my understanding, there's staging and production environment, right? So how do you deal with multiple developers and branching on a staging environment for validation?
The way to handle it is Akamai Sandbox.
Yeah.
So Akamai Sandbox will fix this problem. So Akamai Sandbox is basically an Akamai Edge instance that is installed locally on a developer's machine. So if you have multiple developers that are working on the same config, someone will work on performance piece, the other one will work on offload piece, they will be able to test their configuration locally before pushing it out to staging and impacting all the rest. So Akamai Sandbox is a tool that will actually solve this problem. If you want, I can show you that later.
Thanks.
And operationally for us, for WAPO, or for Arc Publishing, it is, a lot of times the client will say, hey, can you put this in my sandbox environment, my sandbox site first? So we will do a full deploy, in which case the customer has no knowledge of Akamai staging network at that point. It's just a change for that client in their sandbox environment. And if once they're okay with the change, we can take that same JSON and apply it to their production environment and let it roll out. So it's, so not all clients do this. Some clients are like, yeah, just put it in production. We're like, okay, we'll send that out for you. But it's, as far as like loop testing, like for us as we write that JSON to know like, hey, is this going to do exactly what I want? Before I'm committing it back into that customer's configuration, yeah, Akamai Sandbox, like for local development, allows us to iterate pretty fast. We do have collisions, like inside of the pipeline, multiple people testing things at the same time. So yes, it is a concern, and that's one of the things we're trying to address, as we switch to a Lambda, is that we're able to sort of target which sites we're going to be publishing at which time, so that people can run parallel.
Have you also automated alert creation as well within Control Center for this, or more focused on real-time monitoring for that?
So most of our alerting is via Datadog, so that the metric data that we bring in, we write global alerts out of Datadog, so using anomaly and things like that. We do have configured edge alerts, so we do add CP codes for new sites as they're created, like into the alert configuration, kind of on a batch basis, and so those alerts are then routed as basically an event in Datadog or directly to OpsGenie. So there is some management of edge alerts, but our long-term goal is to have most of that data, coming in via data pipeline into Datadog.
Okay, this was the last question. Thank you very much.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.